You're reviewing this year's strategy at 10 p.m. Three options on your screen. Each has merit, each carries risk. Your team will execute whichever you choose, but they can't advise on decisions that are affecting them. Your board evaluates outcomes, not process. You have the capability to decide. What you lack is diverse perspective at the point of decision. I'm Gavin Bryce, a leadership coach and author. 76% of executives operate in decision isolation, just like this. This isn't personal failing, it's just a structural reality. Now, in this video, you'll discover why isolation is structural, what informal networks can't provide, and how to assess whether structured peer support could serve you. We'll cover research, transformation, and next steps. Now, if you felt this during January planning, you're not alone, and it's not a personal failing. Research shows 76% of executives experience decision isolation, not because they lack capability, not because they haven't built relationships, because role seniority concentrates decision authority while simultaneously reducing peer access. This is the structural reality that few discuss. The higher your role, the fewer true peers exist. Your team can't counsel you on choices affecting them. Decision dynamics prevent it. They'll execute your decision, but they can't really advise on it. Your board evaluates outcomes, not process. They assess results, not decision-making quality necessarily. The advice gap isn't about capability. It's about where everyone sits in relation to the decision. Consider what happens in January. Strategic planning concentrates, budget finalization, team structure reviews, annual decisions accumulate, hiring senior leaders, entering new markets, restructuring operations, and each choice matters. Each carries consequence. The volume makes visible what exists throughout the year, decisions made without diverse peer input. The operational noise temporarily quiets. December's momentum gives way to January's relative calm. This creates space for reflection that operational months rarely allow, and that reflection often surfaces what was always present, the absence of diverse perspectives at decision points. Not a closing window, a natural pause when you notice that isolation tax is accumulating. Small, suboptimal choices compound into strategic drift. Unchallenged assumptions harden into organizational dogma. And the absence of external perspective creates echo chambers where confirming evidence receives attention whilst contradictory data gets dismissed. Over months and years, this doesn't just limit growth, it creates vulnerability. Competitors with diverse input adapt faster, markets shift while insulated leaders maintain outdated assumptions. And the gap between what's required and what's recognized widens until crisis forces awareness. But here's what's interesting. This isn't inevitable. Some leaders do operate differently. Now, you've likely tried building a network, and here's why it has maybe solved the problem. Most leaders I work with have invested years in professional relationships. Coffee with former colleagues, occasional lunches with leaders from other industries, phone calls when facing specific decisions, and these connections provide genuine value. They offer perspective, they create connection. But they're not designed for what senior leadership actually requires. Let me be specific about three solutions leaders typically try and what each serves a different purpose than structured peer support. So first, informal networking, coffee chats, LinkedIn connections, former colleagues that you trust. The challenge isn't quality, it's consistency. These relationships operate on availability, not on commitment. Meeting frequency depends on schedule alignment, and momentum exists only when both parties maintain it. When you need input most, maybe during crisis, during uncertainty, in the decisions that will define your tenure, informal networks may not be accessible. The colleague you'd call is in their own crisis. The former peer is between roles. The relationship that seems solid evaporates when urgency arrives. Second, executive coaching. Now, one-on-one coaching provides personalized support. I offer it myself, and it's incredibly valuable. But here's what it fundamentally can't replicate: the collective wisdom of peers who've just navigated your exact decision. Your coach advises based on methodology and experience. Your peers share lived reality. They've sat where you're sitting, and that distinction matters profoundly. Third, industry associations and conferences, transactional networking, same sector experiences. Everyone here operates in your context, which means everyone shares your blind spots. When a private sector CEO consults only other private sector CEOs, assumptions can go unchallenged. Cross-sector peer groups surface thinking patterns invisible from inside your context. These aren't wrong choices, they serve important purposes, but they're not designed for sustained peer support with diverse perspectives, formal confidentiality, and consistent accountability. That requires different infrastructure entirely. Now, here are 6 patterns that signal structured peer support would serve you. Leaders recognize these without labeling them as problems. And if 4 or more of these describe your current experience, then structured peer support would likely serve you well. First, strategic decisions happen without diverse input. Your major decisions, hiring senior leaders, entering new markets, restructuring teams, happen with input from people who report to you or evaluate you, not from peers who understand the role without a stake in the outcomes. The 76% reflects structural reality, not personal inadequacy. Second, the weight of decisions concentrate in your role. Role seniority naturally concentrates decision authority. Now, your team can't counsel you on choices affecting them. Your board evaluates outcomes rather than advising on process. Peers provide neutral ground for exploration without those hierarchical dynamics. Third, your team can't advise on certain decisions. 70% of new CEOs report this structural gap. And the advice gap isn't about capability, it's about position dynamics. Some decisions require input from people unaffected by the outcomes. Fourth, perspective and diversity. If everyone you consult shares your industry context, you're seeing pattern repetition rather than disruption. Cross-industry peer groups surfing thinking patterns invisible from inside your context. Fifth, accountability operates through self-discipline alone. Self-accountability functions until it doesn't. The 32% increase in leadership effectiveness in peer groups derives partly from external accountability. Peers hold you to commitments in ways self-discipline can't replicate. And 6, January planning reveals absence of peer input. If your strategy surfaces uncertainty that diverse input might address, isolation is likely contributing. So this isn't anxiety, it's structural recognition that consequential decisions benefit from perspective that you can't generate alone. And if 4 or more describe your experience, what you're feeling has a name and it also has solutions. So let me show you what this looks like in practice. James, a managing director at a mid-sized manufacturing company, 15 years in his role, successful by external measures, revenue growth, team stability, board confidence. But January arrived and with it a decision that felt different. He needed to restructure his senior team, not a minor adjustment, but a fundamental realignment. The executives would move roles, one would likely leave, and the decision would shape the company's trajectory for years to come. James had the capability to decide, but what he lacked was diverse perspective at the point of the decision. His team couldn't advise, the decision affected them directly. His board would evaluate the outcome, not guide the process. His informal network, well, the colleague he'd normally call was navigating his own crisis. The former peer was between roles, so when urgency arrived, informal relationships evaporated. James realized during that January planning that the weight of this decision didn't need to sit with him alone. He joined a structured peer group where there are monthly facilitated meetings with leaders from private, public and not-for-profit sectors, a formal confidentiality agreement through a member compact, and cross-sectoral diversity deliberately designed. His first meeting happened 2 days before his board presentation. He shared the restructure challenge, the team structure misalignment with strategy, but reorganization meant difficult conversations. Within 90 minutes, he had input from a public sector leader who'd navigated similar stakeholder complexity, a not-for-profit executive who'd restructured under resource constraints, and 3 private sector peers who'd made comparable decisions. The diverse perspectives revealed options he hadn't considered and blind spots that he couldn't see alone. The decision remained James's. The accountability, of course, sat with him. But the thinking that informed it came from collective wisdom rather than isolated analysis. He made the restructure. The board presentation was informed by perspectives that he couldn't generate alone. And 6 months later, he reported not just better outcomes, he reported feeling less weight personally. And this is what structured peer environments provide. Not abdication of responsibility, not committee decision-making, but access to the collective wisdom that your role requires. And informal networks cannot consistently deliver that. So here's what matters most. Decision isolation is structural. 76% of executives experience it. Informal networks serve one purpose. Structured peer environments serve another. And if 4 or more indicators apply to you, this isn't something that you navigate alone. The Forum is a private membership group for leaders in Scotland. Monthly facilitated meetings, one-on-one coaching, cross-sector diversity, formal confidentiality through a member compact. If you're a senior leader who recognizes decision isolation as structural reality, let's explore whether the Forum serves your needs. Book a discovery conversation. There's a link in the description. No obligation, just exploration. If you found this valuable, you can check out my other videos and shorts on my YouTube channel.